You know, they say that money can save you a lot of troubles, but sometimes it can just add a lot of headaches and pain. And that's what's going on right now with the billionaire founder of Tesla in a world of hurt, and his stock in a world of even more hurt, and it's going from bad to worse, and he can't get out of his own way. Fox Business Network's Christina Partsinevelos is on all the above. Hey, Christina.
Hi, Neil. And you're right. You're seeing the stock just plummet over the last 2 weeks, more especially just on Friday. Why is that? Because there are now new reports saying that the SEC, the Security Exchange Commission, will be meeting with Musk, his board, early next week. These are just reports so far, but the stock reacted. The stock also reacted to a New York Times interview, which I'll get to in just a second. But what we're seeing just over the last little while, this is just the reaction on Friday once the New York Times interview and the SEC meeting came out. But why would the SEC be looking into Elon Musk and his company? There's two reasons. The first one is exploring whether Tesla misled employees and the public regarding the Model 3 battery, as well if he misled investors with his tweets, possibly with market manipulation, causing people to buy into the stock at an artificially high price, or trying to get those short sellers when we saw the stock just jump right after he said that he was taking the company private at $420 US and he had funding secured, which still has not been clarified. Musk, though, gave a 1-hour interview to the New York Times. He said he oscillated between laughter and tears, and it was the most excruciating year of his life. He was sleeping on the factory floor, working 120 hours during the week, and he was questioned, will you step down as CEO? Maybe you have a little bit too much on your plate. He responded by saying, if you have anyone who could do a better job, please let me know. They can have the job. Is there someone who could do the job better? They can have the reins right now. So a very confident tweet coming from Musk, who's facing lawsuits from shareholders. You have a whistleblower who's also saying that the batteries in certain Model 3s were defaulted or broken and yet still put into the car. So this is an ongoing situation with Elon Musk and the SEC. And yet he says he doesn't regret the tweet, which, by the way, has nothing to do with marijuana. There's no pot reference there. And he is not stepping down as CEO. So dealing with lots and lots of problems and possibly tons of fines. Neil?
Yeah, but when he's tempting fate, right, to say if you can find someone better, that's an engraved invitation a lot of times.
It's a very, very confident statement from a very confident man.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Great reporting as always, Christina. Appreciate it. In the meantime, what to make of all of that, the tweets, the trouble, whether this company can survive with or without him. He's so associated with it, as Christina pointed out. You got to wonder. John Layfield back with us, Kat Dimp, Heath Herzog, and Jonas Max Ferris. Jonas, end with you, begin with you. Let's just get the next lead that they can find someone to replace him. Will the company be the same in that event?
There's no one to replace Elon Musk because nobody could drive the stock price as high as he has over the last few years. I'm not talking about the tweet specifically, just in general. The guy's a genius. He's a crazy genius, which we have to all watch out for.
That's what I say about Layfield. You know,
I don't buy the no pot thing.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. If anybody did a 420 pot reference, it's the guy who put 11 on the volume with the Tesla from the Spinal Tap reference. So let's just get that out there. I'm not going to bang
very
the guy
good, very good.
Anyway, he needs to come down from the Ambien or whatever. Anyway, look, this situation with the tweet, I don't know if he was kind of kidding around. I don't know if he was trying to get the convertible bonds to convert to get more money, because there is a serious cash burn issue here. It's a tough business to get profitable, and alternative energy is not easy economics. That's why Uber drivers don't drive hybrid cars usually. I hope he doesn't get in a lot of trouble, because a lot of people would get in trouble. He's not a crook, so I think the SEC will take that into consideration, obviously, but this smells of stock manipulation. Even though he doesn't personally trying to sell shares into it like some fraudster, he does need to keep the stock high to keep the cash flow going to this company. Maybe he didn't talk to a lawyer first, but maybe he had a deal with Saudis or Chinese or some of his billionaire friends.
It's all going to come out. We know it's all going to come out. I just wonder, is he so ubiquitous with the name and the company? Not in electric cars, because everyone seems to have them these days, but theirs are unique. Theirs are, with all the panache and the style, he's associated with.
Well, I'm a shareholder of Tesla, so as a shareholder, yeah, I think I have to agree with you. The man is a genius. I mean, you as an investor, you want to believe that he's going to be able to helm this company and spread his genius around to everything that he's doing. But this isn't a new thing for him. On April 1st, he sent out a tweet saying that Tesla went bankrupt as an April Fool's joke.
Bankrupt.
So,
right.
Bankrupt. Okay.
Let's be clear.
Okay,
yeah.
Bankrupt. But
he's
it set the stock down 7%.
A little odd, right?
Yeah. So if he's going to get in trouble for this, then why can't he get in trouble for that?
But you know, the SEC has got to be careful, right? I mean, because they can't give them any special treatment. But of course, the fear is it's a special company. It's an American iconic name. A lot of jobs, a lot of lives in the balance here.
Yeah, and I think the SEC is going to take that into account. This looks like a very straight 10b-5 violation. This is a straight
That's
rule.
what I thought. 10b-5. What is
This
10b-5?
it's about fraud, and it's
Sure,
about the
got it.
secured funding. What that he said he had. The standard for that is not verbal. I mean, and naivety of the law is no excuse for not crossing that threshold of having that.
What if the
secured
Saudis
funding.
would have run and confirmed that? Yeah, we told them that.
It's still going to be a violation because you have to have at least a term sheet. According to the SEC, you have to have at least a term sheet. Has to be initialed. There has to be something more than a verbal agreement. When he walked out of that meeting on July 31st and he said, "I thought I had a verbal agreement," that is not enough to meet the standard. In past historical references, what the SEC has done, the SEC looks to probably give him a slap on the wrist and a fine.
You know what's the irony here, Kat? Brought down by a tweet on this technology that makes just musing about whatever's going on in the day easy to do. It comes back to bite you.
Yeah, I feel like if you're that rich, though, you probably aren't worried too much about your tweets. You probably get real confident. I'm pretty confident, and I don't even have a lot of money. I am confident enough to tweet some pretty ridiculous stuff as it is. So I can't imagine being that rich and that powerful and not wanting to just every now and then, oh, I have all these followers. Wouldn't it be funny if I said this? It's kind of a tempting
But he
thing.
doesn't strike me as like, you know, a crook or like an Ivan Boesky type. It's no unspoken thought, no unspoken tweet.
He's doing what he wants to do. I mean,
Right.
he has, I mean, do I dare say privilege to be able to go ahead and go on Twitter and say whatever he wants and get a slap on the wrist if he says something off that sends the markets.
Do you think he
to a
knew
tizzy?
ahead of time, to John's point, that this could come back to bite him?
I don't think so. I don't think, I doubt he consulted attorneys. I doubt that he, talked to anyone on his team. I think he just he even said in the New York Times piece that he wanted to be more transparent. But at what point does this transparency really cause issues? And some people really enjoy it and they want to see that from a CEO. I personally think that he should just, zipit.com.
Though, Jonathan, I was thinking, did he
Let's get these references.
Did he
right.
set himself up, though, because he went after analysts? Remember the conference call where he was ridiculing these analysts who were questioning?
The boneheads.
Right. And then it comes back to bite you.
Let me tell you something. They are boneheads, but I will say you
Right.
can't. He actually just says that the hedge fund guys are smart to short him, but he hates them. You can't. Look, this guy, he's John DeLorean with an unlimited bank book. Like, he's had access to Wall Street. That's what let him run a company at a loss this long. That goes for a lot of startups, Uber and everything. There's a lot of venture capital. You can't take all that money to run a crazy, brilliant idea that's going to lose money for 10 years or more and then get mad at them where the money came from. This money comes from boneheads. I mean, some of the tech guys aren't boneheads, but Wall Street, the Goldman, all these companies that are keeping the convertible bond buyers, they are why he can do these crazy things for so long. So you can't be that.
Well, but if he
mean to
didn't
him.
have something to back it up, and Kat, say what you will of this technology, I know it's ubiquitous now. Everyone seems to have an electric car. I guess Volvo was going to go all electric within a few years. But he gave it and gives it panache and style like Apple did with Steve Jobs. So you could make an argument that there's something to back that up. The question that I have is, much like people asked about Steve Jobs when he was forced out of the company, he returned triumphantly, of course. But can this company continue to do its thing without him?
I don't think it would be the same. I think that they're so connected, and I think that a lot of people, my age at least, certainly admire Elon Musk, and they think he's such a fascinating figure. And I think that without him, it wouldn't be the same thing. There wouldn't be that same fascination, and there wouldn't be that same innovation either.
Well, does the company survive potentially without him?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Apple survived without Steve Jobs. The question is,
But he came back.
he did come back, and then he passed away, and it's still, now it's at the $1 trillion valuation.
But had he not come back, I doubt that it would be the same.
To be honest, I think you're right. Most of the innovation
Yeah.
came when he came back, so I don't know what would happen to
I don't think this company survives
Tesla.
without him. He took a rocket company from scratch. He launched more missiles last year than Europe and Russia combined. He really might be the most creative guy in the world. I think he made a horrible mistake. I think he needs to get off Twitter. He's going to get a fine for it, it looks like, and a slap on the wrist. But this company doesn't survive without Elon Musk.
The guy they brought in for Apple way back, Scully or Senatech, that guy almost ruined Apple.
Right.
The difference is Apple makes money and always has done products. They don't get into money-losing things for very long. Maybe the HomePod is the only exception to that. And Tesla loses a lot of money and needs to keep they need him in there, because they don't have a product that makes money, so you need him to pump the company and keep it. I don't want to use the word pump because that's what he's in trouble for right now. But at the end of the day, it needs someone like him to keep the excitement level, people buying these cars.
He's the face man of the company.
But Jonas, they're great at batteries and they're great at solar panels. The only thing he has not been able to do is produce cars, which is a really old school technology. He's trying to bring the new world and just hasn't worked yet. And he's developed one of the best cars of all time. He just can't mass produce it.
That's the trouble. To mass produce what is a niche but very appealing product. All right, we'll see what happens. In the meantime, seeing what happens when it comes to China. Forget about whether they try to economically target us and then screw us. Now signs that militarily they are going after us. We'll explain after this.
It's easy to think that all money managers are pretty much...
You know, we're so focused on trade wars these days that we miss the possibility of actual war these days, especially when it comes to China. Again, the tit for tat on what goods come into this country at what price, notwithstanding. The fact of the matter is we're told that the Chinese are already targeting a number of U.S. sites for the just-in-case scenario of war. Wouldn't be the first superpower to look at doing that, but the fact that it's moving so fast did get people noticing. Among them, retired four-star General, Fox News senior strategic analyst Jack Keane. General, always good to see you. What do you make of this, and where are they building up their oomph here?
Well, first of all, China's goals are very clear. We used to wonder, you know, where is China going? Are they just going to stay closeted on becoming part of the international marketplace and opening up their economy, or they have designs outside mainland China? Now it's clear. In writing, what they want to do is dominate and control the Asia Pacific and isolate the United States. And also in 20 years, President Xi has said this, want to surpass the United States as the preeminent global power in the world today. To do that, they have to build up their military. They are conducting the most rapid buildup of a military of any country in the world, to include what we are doing right now with the Trump defense buildup. And why are they doing that? Because the United States in the Asia-Pacific region has been a dominant military power for years. They want to at least have parity with us, because that will give them leverage over all of our allies in the region. They don't have any allies in the region except Laos and Cambodia and North Korea. So all the rest of those countries out there are allied with us. And they're putting significant pressure on those countries. Well, first of all, the capabilities is much greater than just bombers. They've got long-range missiles that from mainland China can reach every one of our air bases in the region. They got anti-ship missiles that can hold our carrier battle groups at bay so they can't launch the aircraft to help one of our allies in the region. They are transforming their air, maritime, and ground forces to include increase in space technology. So that's where they're going with this military buildup. It's significant, and they're doing it. They don't want to go to war with us, but they want to use it as leverage to gain geopolitical influence and control, particularly in that region, and also they're going to spread it into the Middle East and the Indian Ocean as well.
You know, they keep militarizing these islands along the South China Sea and elsewhere. Now, the argument that we've had is, well, it's not our land either. It's closer to their neck of the woods. But what do we do about that?
Well, we've got to work with our allies and come up with a comprehensive strategy to do this. The administration has taken a step in the right direction, and it's a big one. It walked away from Obama's understanding of the world. We have identified Russia and China as major threats to U.S. national security, and China being the long-term strategic threat. And the only way you solve a problem like that is the way we have solved those problems in the 20th century, and when we had the Soviet Union as a major threat. And that is to work with our allies in the region and do it collectively. And we need a comprehensive strategy to do that. In terms of implementing the defense strategy and the national security strategy, that really hasn't taken hold yet, in my judgment. I've just come back from Southeast Asia, and I'll flat tell you that these are our allies in the region, and they are very concerned that China is really outpacing us in the region. And you mentioned it in the introduction, economic warfare. They are the major capital investors in Southern Asia, in Southeast Asia, in Latin and South America, and in Africa, and rapidly becoming the same in the Middle East. What is all that investment about? It's about getting geopolitical influence and control. That's what that is all about. And we've got to get into this and compete more favorably. Gone are the policies of the Obama administration fortunately. And this administration is moving in the right direction. I think we got to move fast, to be frank about it.
Real quickly, we got news out of Turkey that Erdogan, the president, is saying that it's an economic coup the U.S. is trying to orchestrate against this country. He's not going to have it. And he's been cozying up, as you know, General, to the Russians and the Chinese. Should we just kick him out of NATO? What do you think?
No, we can't do that. Listen, we got to look past Erdogan. Look, he's an authoritarian, pretty close to a dictator, getting rid of democratic values. He's siding up with Russia and Iran inside of Syria. That's very frustrating to us. He had a border open for ISIS to grow and become a force of 30,000 from 600. So listen, we disagree with a lot of it. But here's the positive side. Turkey sits in the most strategic piece of land that NATO is a part of, and that is where Europe meets the Middle East. They're sitting right there. That's very strategically important to NATO. Secondly, Turkey has the second largest military force in NATO, outpacing everybody else who's third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. The largest, of course, is the United States. The reality is that Erdogan, we've got to do the best we can to work with him and be tough on him like the Trump administration is doing, but look beyond him. Don't kick him out of NATO, even though he's frustrating.
General, thank you very much. It's always good chatting, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah, good talking to you, Neil.
All right, the more NFL players take a knee, a Blue Lives Matter group that says, you know what, we're just going to take a pass after this.
Update your floors with Empire Today's $50 sale.
Welcome back, everyone. 22 minutes after the hour. A couple of Miami Dolphins players protesting during last night's national anthem. It's a scene that's been kind of playing out throughout the preseason. We don't know what will happen when the professional season kicks off in full gear in a couple of weeks here, but there is an interesting development here that the Blue Lives Matter group has turned down a partnership offer from, for example, the New York Jets this season. The founder of Blue Lives Matter, Joseph Beatrice, joins us right now. Joe, we were chatting during the break. You were saying that you're not trying to make a big to-do with this, just that you have serious troubles associating with the team after this. Explain.
I do. Well, for instance, today, right after this, I'm going to be going to the Bronx, and there was a detective, Joseph Lem, that went overseas and was killed in action. And when he came back, one of the most poignant things ever was the son on the shoulders of his partner saluting the casket. And what was on that casket? The flag. And that's why we stand. That's why when we go on the corner today and they reveal that street sign, we're going to stand because Joe can't anymore. And I'm not saying that their issues haven't happened in the past. They have. But they're not going on, like they say, in full force today. And I think if we open up a dialogue and start talking and understand one another, maybe finally this 2 or 3 year hiatus of the NFL and people going back and forth with them can finally end.
Well, it doesn't look like it's ending anytime soon. For example, the Jets put out a statement on your move saying that we've had a positive relationship with first responders throughout the tri-state area for decades. We'll continue to do so. We've consistently partnered with a wide range of first responder organizations on numerous initiatives, including after-school programs and Shop with the Cop events during the holidays for disadvantaged children. What do you make of what they're saying?
Well, I'm not discrediting that they've ever done that before, but an issue that I have is when you sign a player, Isaiah Crowell. Now listen, I'm not discrediting that he didn't take it down and apologize the very next day, and I'm not discrediting that he didn't give $35,000 to a police fund after the 5 Dallas officers were shot and killed. But you know what he was able to do? He was able to erase the comments he made. These family members that lose their loved ones can't hit the rewind button. They can't have their loved one come back through the door. And they need to be held accountable that you have this type of player that, yes, he has a business, and this is his business, going out and playing football. But he was able to press rewind, and this is going to follow him now. And I think we need to start working together, and they need to take accountability for these players.
All right. Now, ESPN is trying to find a way around this by joining games after the national anthem, if they even play the national anthem. What do you think of that?
You know, I don't like the fact that some of their owners say, we'll pay the fine, you could stay in the locker room. That's like saying when a little child goes and does something bad and takes a candy bar, the parent pays it for them. Instead of slapping their wrist and say, don't do it. They're condoning this. Now, we have to stop. These players make millions of dollars to play within white lines on American soil and get paid with American dollars. If they don't like it and they can't do this and look at the greater good, they can go elsewhere.
You know, the old line that they come back at you out and say, well, the flag also gives them the freedom to do all the above, you say?
What was it, Dak Dax Prescott on the Cowboys, he said, this isn't the place to do it. Look at Derek Jeter. You'll never know if he was a Republican or Democrat, because you know what? He entertained. He knew what it meant for these people to come out there and pay hard-earned dollars that they work hard for to be entertained. And that's what they need to realize. They're entertainers. They're not politicians.
All right. They argued that, and it started with Colin Kaepernick and all, and now we're led to believe that some years back he had been guaranteed a position on the Denver Broncos. John Elway was saying that. I don't know what's the truth here, but do you as a football fan feel any differently about the players? Or do you think people who are, ratings went down with the NFL last year, whether this is a reason, anyone's guess, but do you see continued problems this year?
Police officers are judged by a very few that really do some stupid things and very disheartening things. And I feel the same way with the players. There's a lot of good NFL players that support this country and are going to do the good thing. The problem is sometimes the negative voices outweigh the positive ones. So I do appreciate the players. Listen, they're talented beyond belief. I've always wanted to be a Major League ball player and hit that home run in the 9th. But these guys are living that dream, and they have to understand that the children are our future, and we need to set an example for them.
So you will continue this. It's not a disassociation. It's not a protest or boycott. You will not be working in sync with the Jets or other teams until this is resolved.
Correct. And somebody always has to be the catalyst and do something good, whether it's Martin Luther King Jr. or John Lennon. And sometimes you need to be the voice. And there's a lot of officers all over the nation that reach out to me and just say thank you. People that aren't even officers, widows. There's one of the Dallas 5 officers killed. The mother reaches out to me and she says, Joe, thank you. And I would love to be that bridge and that gap. And let's get back to the great American sport if people want that, and finally be on the same page.
But are you unfair to the Jets because they're not into kneeling?
This wasn't about the Jets. What it was about was accountability for one of their players, that it's going to follow you.
Okay. We'll see what happens. No, thank you. Very good seeing you. I know you have a crazy day ahead of you, so we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Or when we come back, the intel officers who are saying, John Brennan has been maligned. Take our security passes away, too. The U.S. Senator who is happy to consider that after this.
A security clearance is a privilege, and I think John Brennan was abusing that privilege.
People were being singled out to have either their clearances revoked or in the process of being revoked. To me, smacks of Nixonian-type practices.
We shouldn't be politicizing the process by which clearances are either granted or withdrawn.
Removing his security clearance makes sense to me, given his conduct.
He's been totally political. Called him a butthead, and I meant it.
All right, this whole Brennan thing seems to bring out the extremes at both parties right now. The fighting escalating over the yanking of those security credentials for former CIA Director John Brennan. Others are saying that, how he was treated, some in the intelligence community said that we would be honored, Mr. President, you did the same to us. Not all, though. We should posit here that there are a number of others who are saying this is overkill. And if the president is to be criticized for being petty, then what about the comments Mr. Brennan has been making and others since? To South Carolina Republican Senator Tim Scott, who joins us now. Senator, always good to have you. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Good to be back with you.
Are you for what the president did, Senator, to revoke his security clearance?
I think perhaps the foundational question we should ask ourselves is how does the security clearance that people have create a safer nation? That's really the question I have. I can't figure out how to get over that question because we're fighting over whether or not he has it or whether we're taking it. The question is, how is America safer because he has it? If the answer is there really isn't a good answer for that question, then why does he have it? And there's not a good answer for that question, and taking it away seems plausible and logical from my perspective.
All right, so you would support the president in doing so?
Absolutely. I think the question we should ask for everyone who has a national security clearance, a top security clearance that no longer serves in office, how does that clearance better serve our national security interests? And if there's not a good answer to that question, what's there to debate about?
Now, others in the intelligence community who have seen what's happened to Brennan have made him like a sympathetic figure. And I know many in your party have come out to say, well, wait a minute. He has said horrific things about the president and implied even more. He puts out a New York Times editorial in which he surmises that the president saying there was no collusion before the election is hogwash, so that he leaves people wondering, well, what do you know that we don't know? So that he might be doing and acting just the way the president suspected. What do you think?
Well, I think if there was a scintilla of evidence that the president colluded with the Russians, and Brennan had that evidence, the entire world would already know. So the fact of the matter is, a part of what he said in his op-ed is that the president's public comments suggest collusion. I think that's ridiculous. So if you personalize this attack and this debate, then you find yourself rolling in mud. If you ask a better foundational question, which is, why is Brennan having a top security clearance in the nation's best interest? If that is the question we're asking, we get rid of the polarization and the hyperbolic language and all the kerfuffle that's around this issue, and you get down to the nitty-gritty, is our country better? Are we safer? Are we more secure because Brennan and others who served previously have national security clearance? And if the answer is not emphatically yes, then taking away that national security clearance is not a bad thing or a problem. It frankly might actually be better for us.
So that would apply to Trump security officials who later enter private life, that they should not just as a privilege get the clearance once they leave office.
I think if we ask that foundational question, which is, once again, how does that serve our nation? How are we safer because they have it? Then we get ourselves into
Well, I guess the reason why I'm told we
have
have it, sir, you know this far better than I, is that for their successors to share information and get advice, it comes in handy. Now, I don't know if that's true. I do know,
Absolutely.
to your point, we had a guest on earlier, says there are more than 5 million such security passes. I know different levels and grades that are out there now. That has grown exponentially over the last few decades, so something has to be done. But you would be against, I take it from what you're saying, these courtesy privileges granted top cabinet members or former CIA directors or, you know, State Department heads. That has typically been the case over the last few administrations.
I certainly would not say that I'm against it. I would want to understand why we have it that way. The transitional period, so that one administration benefits from the important information that can be shared at that point in time, makes a lot of sense to me. So if there's a temporary transition, that makes a lot of sense. If it's a permanent status that we never check back to see what they're doing with it, that's a problem from my perspective. Now, is that a problem for everyone? I don't know the answer, because we would have to ask that same foundational question to each and every person who has it. And frankly, the other question we should ask is the national security clearance a way to monetize their position or their previous position? And if the answer is yes, that should be brought into light as well.
Good point. Senator, if you don't mind if I switch gears here, Turkey's President Erdogan has responded to what he calls an economic coup attempt of the party of the United States. I believe he's talking to The Hill saying this, but The Hill is picking this up. And obviously that this could escalate here. It comes at the same time the Chinese are coming to this country next week, maybe to cobble together or redo talks on trade impasses here. How do you expect all of this is resolved? I'm talking the trade parts and the back and forth. And do you expect it happening before the November election?
I think we have to break it down a little bit. So in Turkey, the lira is down 40%. They have a good comment from Qatar bringing $15 billion to the table. They actually need about $230 to $250 billion. So the truth is, Erdogan is looking for someone other than the person in his mirror to blame for the challenges that he has. The effects that he's seeing in his country is because they're so heavily leveraged that they are in a very weak position. And as our interest rates climb, it makes their position even weaker. So he's looking for someone to blame. And frankly, then you add in on top of that the Pastor Brunson situation where he was arrested.
Right. By the way, if the pastor were released tomorrow, Senator, would you be among those advising the president to ease off on these tariffs?
I'll say this, if the pastor was not on home arrest but sent back to our country, I would be happier. The fact is that Turkey being a NATO ally, they have not been acting, in my opinion, as an ally. They have become far more distant, and frankly, their relationship with Russia is growing stronger. We have a lot to consider in the relationship. Pastor Brunson is a part of that conversation, but not the whole of that conversation. And then our trade issues with China come into play as well as we have a conversation around trade. I'm optimistic that as the Chinese come to our shore next week, we'll be in a better posture looking at November for real measurable progress in reasonable time. I spoke with Ambassador Lighthizer this morning, and he is somewhat optimistic that we are in a positive posture for better relationships and better negotiations going forward around the world, and hopefully with China.
And is it your hope that these are resolved before the midterms, and if not, your party could be in some trouble?
Well, I think the economy is fantastic. We have a very strong economy, so the trade issue is almost inside baseball, except for small companies that are impacted. I have few companies in South Carolina who are in that position, so we need to make progress where we can. But the challenge really is that we're trying to reset the field, not for tomorrow or next year, but for the next 30 years in our trade negotiations and relationships around the world. I think we have to give the president a little more margin to finish the negotiations he's a part of. It looks like we're starting to make progress in many fronts. In China, I think we're making progress finally. In Europe, we're having conversations about zero barriers. I'm not quite sure that we get there, but we're heading in the right direction. And with NAFTA, the Mexico part of the negotiations seem to have gone pretty well. We're waiting on Canada to come to the table. So we are in a better posture than we were just a week ago, and certainly a better posture than 4 weeks ago. The question is, can we get this done before the election? I think that would be incredibly optimistic. Before the end of the year, I'm certainly more optimistic.
Interesting. Senator, thank you for taking the time.
Yes, sir, Neil. Good to be with you again.
All right, be well. All right, in the meantime, a lot of Americans on this whole Mueller probe sometimes seem to share the sentiment of the president. Just wrap it up after this. It is odd, right? I mean, some things happen and you just question the pairing. Peter Strzok gets canned for the FBI the same week. The American people seem to be telling Bob Mueller, can you put this investigation in the can and just wrap it up? More than 6 out of 10 Americans saying now's the time to get this whole thing done. How's that all faring? Let's go to Chris Swecker, the former assistant FBI director. Chris, not that investigators or those who are behind these investigations are moved by public sentiment or polls, but does it put any pressure on the Mueller team looking over their shoulder knowing that Americans are getting antsy?
Well, having served directly under Robert Mueller for about 2.5 years, I can tell you that he's going to work his pace. They're going to work as quickly as they can, but they're not going to let public sentiment influence what they do. That was the problem with the Comey group and his inner circle. They seem to be influenced by politics and events that were swirling around them. You don't hear a peep from Mueller. They're just putting their heads down and doing their work.
Do they pay attention to the timing of things, though? In this case, you got to wrap it up by this time so you don't influence the midterms. And you know how that goes. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they would. I think with the midterms coming up, I really think the special counsel is going to look at it one of two ways. You do something before the election, then you're influencing in some way. I suspect he'll wait till after. If there's something dramatic that's going to happen, I suspect he'll wait till after the elections to make sure that nothing that he does has any influence over the midterms.
I know it's a little legal apples and oranges, but if you'll indulge me, as we wait to hear what this jury is going to do about Paul Manafort, the president's former campaign manager, albeit briefly, there are some issues in that could tie into Mueller, that is business relationships and the like. Will you scrutinize anything from that decision as far as its potential impact on the Mueller investigation, or do you suspect the Mueller folks will?
Well, obviously the special counsel believes that Manafort has key information. That's why they're leaning on him so hard. That's why there's 2 indictments in 2 different federal districts. They really would like to have his cooperation, and they would like to have it because he is the key central person with respect to Russians. He had alleged Russian operative working very closely with him. He was in the debt of Oleg Deripaska, one of the oligarchs who was very close to Putin, and offered to give him special briefings as he was the campaign chairman for the president-elect, President Trump. So there's smoke there. And I'm not saying that the president was involved in collusion, shall we say, but I will say that if anyone inside the campaign had discussions about sanctions relief in exchange for dirt, then you're getting awful close.
All right, and not only sanctions relief for potential dirt, as you point out, which you don't know, but collusion itself, or talking to Russians wouldn't be the problem. Extracting deals or concessions from one or the other all of a sudden does make a worry, right?
Right. And it may be that people on the Trump team were incredibly naive. They wouldn't be the first.
Right.
President Bush, President Obama, seems like every president has been naive towards the Russians. Putin is out to get us. Make no mistake about it. He wants to take us down.
Yeah, and one president, even president-elect, learns that after another. Chris Wecker, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, when we come back, the House Majority Whip Steve Scalise on what it takes now to get the right message out before time runs out. Stick around.
When you bundle your... It's funny, you know, you show these candidates on the Democrat side and they repudiate Pelosi, and then they turn right around and they parrot Pelosi on the policies.
All right, that was Republican Steve Scalise talking about now the almost 50-strong Democrats who are entertaining House races of their own and want to make it to Washington, but don't want to be part of, you know, a Democratic majority, they hope, that will include Nancy Pelosi as their speaker. In other words, they don't want her leading the wave here. Let's get the read from Alexander Smith. We got Jonas Max Ferris and Kathy Arute. Kathy, what's interesting in it is, and I've seen this borne out again and again with many of these Democratic candidates who tell me they want to go there, they don't want her to lead them, but they by and large support what she has espoused, that is nixing the tax cuts and doing a lot of the other stuff that she wants.
She's not radical. She's not rogue. She's not all the way to the left. I mean, she speaks for the Democratic Party when she speaks. She's always gone.
Well, she is all the way to the left. I mean, the question is, do they want her leading that charge?
Well,
they say no, but they support her causes.
They've always supported her. There's 55 that I think that say they don't want her as speaker. But then again, they turn around, and the only thing they can say is, we need new leadership. They can't say one thing against her policy, just we need new leadership. It's like we want a new car, we want the new car smell. But that's it? I mean, there's nothing wrong with our car?
All right, it's a valid point. Alexander, they also might want to just try to be taking away an argument from the Republicans, right? That they've made Nancy Pelosi the story. They don't want her to be the story.
And I don't think voters should buy it. It's not just on a policy level that these candidates would be supporting the policies of Nancy Pelosi. It's really that they might be actually in support of Nancy Pelosi, but just sort of saying that for the election. We see this because Nancy Pelosi herself said candidates are going to say what they have to say to get elected. If you look at the Ohio special election in the 12th district, Danny O'Connor, the candidate there, vowed over and over and over again, I'm not going to support Nancy Pelosi. He went to MSNBC in Washington for one day and reversed that position and ended up losing that special election. So when they say they're not going to support Nancy Pelosi, it really seems like if they get into office, they might do something different.
Yeah, and you almost have to wonder, Jonas, whether it matters, to Kathy's point, whether they support her as their leader or not. They support what she wants to do, right?
Yeah, this woman is not like far left of the party, and I mean, she's from San Francisco, and I think what really happens is nobody good wants the job because it is a job where you become the punching bag for a hated group, which is Congress, and you have to keep churning this group around. Right. No one becomes president from this job unless a lot of people die. I mean, basically, Boehner was
you're really good at
it's a job to absorb the hate, and you have to be an operator. Boehner was a nice guy. He was a good, but his brain got ruined by the job. Right to Paul Ryan's brand is getting destroyed by this job. There's probably good people in the party who don't want this job ahead of her because.
But I'm not even worried about the job. I'm saying, I guess what I'm saying is it's very clear they all share the same views. You can argue whether left is center, extreme left. I mean, but Kathy, is it fair to say they take over the House, they're going to try to just disembowel the tax package? It's a fairly given, right?
Yep, but whatever happens, Pelosi's going to be with the party, so it doesn't.
No, I understand that. I'm not even here to say whether she is or not, but that the goal will be let's junk this tax package, and that might, in fact,
and that's what the people would want.
Well, but I'm just saying that. Why don't they just say that? Because they're afraid to say it.
Right, as opposed, well, they're saying whatever it takes, and that's what Nancy Pelosi actually said.
Well, see,
I don't care what you say about me. I don't care what
see, that's what's
I don't care what you say, get elected. That's what she actually said.
Well, and that's what they're doing, to Alexander, to your point. If every one of them came out and said, you know what, I'm going to junk this whole thing. But when I hold their feet to the fire and ask about, as I did earlier on, do you think it's chump change, the $1,000 that some of these individuals got from companies that got taxed like crumbs and all? And they said, well, no, it's not. But we'd have to redo this, make it, rejigger it to make it more advantageous to the middle class, lower class. But to a man or woman, the ones I've talked to, they're very careful around that because they don't want that to get out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, Nancy Pelosi has made it clear that if Democrats take back the House, the tax cut is the first thing on the chopping block. And I agree with you that when most when most voters saw, their paychecks increase this year, when they've seen the bonuses that are being given out by these companies, that's something that they see real value in. And to see Nancy Pelosi and other Democrats devalue that, I think is a huge liability for them. But I'm going to push back on something that there's no other person in the Democratic Party who wants this job. We've actually seen that there are a couple Democrats who have wanted this job. Someone like Tim Ryan from Ohio, who's definitely more representative of where the country is right now.
And he tried for it before.
He tried for it before, and the Democratic establishment has effectively neutered his voice. He's been pushed out by Nancy Pelosi and the powers that be.
All right. Well, whoever the new powers that be would be, they'd have to be younger, right? I mean,
if you want to go, Susan Delbany from Washington, is a tech savvy, made her own money, not a career politician, was in Microsoft. That's the kind of person who should do, but that's the kind of person who has a bigger career maybe ahead of her than getting ruined by this job. As far as, you say the first thing is the taxes. Of course, the first chop of the tax cuts is going to be whoever has the job. It's what the second chop is going to be. And if like a Bernie Sanders type was in there, then all of a sudden it's like, let's privatize industry. Nancy's not that, she's not that socialist. She's not going to go in that direction and ruin the party.
So be careful what you wish for.
But also, it doesn't have to be a younger person. I don't think Pelosi's age really is a question, because look at the burn, feeling the burn. The millennials felt the burn. They liked Bernie Sanders, and he wasn't a millennial.
Hey,
so I don't think...
You're talking the wrong guy. I think 60 is the new 59.
Yeah, right. I'm with you.
Now you got to go younger.
Yeah, that's fine. All right, we'll have a lot more on this, all of this, I promise, wrapped up in just a few seconds.